Welcome everyone, and thank you for watching this presentation. The title is a new experiment on the use of image to answer web survey questions. And what we do in this research is we explore the impact of asking participants to answer open-ended survey questions by uploading an image or by taking a photo in the moment, compared to asking them to type the answer on a normal way with text. And the first thing that we should ask ourselves is, why do we care about images? Why do we want to use images in web surveys? Well, because there are three potential opportunities that asking participants to upload an image bring into the survey research. The first potential opportunity is that there is a potential of improving how we collect data, and we can study new research questions. Because images can provide rich and detailed information, images are free of human memory limitations, and at the end, they can allow us to collect objective data like receipts, physical information like the height of the people appearing on the images, or even device information when we ask them to take screenshots of app used. Second, taking and sharing images is one of the most popular online activities. People are used to take pictures and share it with their friends in order to describe what they are doing. So if we ask them to upload images, maybe we make the surveys more engaging and more natural for them. And finally, nowadays we can use computer vision algorithms and APIs in order to automatically extract information from images instead of manually coding those images. So the burden now is lower than before. And there is not a lot of previous literature, but I want to highlight two papers. One is from Jackal and colleagues, and they asked a sample of participants to upload photos of receipts to fill in consumption diaries. So trying to explore if that would be a good alternative. And I really encourage you to check this paper. And there is a second paper, and sorry for promoting myself, but it's a paper that we did and we published with some of the colleagues. And what we did was exploring the response rates of asking participants to first upload a photo taken in the moment, and second, upload an already saved image in order to answer some survey questions. And what we found is that response rates are a little bit higher than 0.5% of the sample. And that might not seem high, but we were expecting lower because it is a pretty new task for participants. So that was encouraging for us. The problem for these past research is that they never test that in an experimental way. So we don't have a counterfactual to compare the results with. And that's what motivates us to keep exploring these. So in this particular research, we try to explore three research questions. The first being, what is the effect of answering open-ended survey questions with images instead of typing text? And we try to explore these looking at 4 indicators. So do we find high break-off rates for images? Do we find high item non-response? What does happen with completion times? What does happen with question evaluation? Because we found in past research that the item non-response, even if it's not as bad as we thought, is not really high, we think that it would be nice to explore if motivational messages have an impact on that. So the second research question is, what is the effect of including a motivational message on the same 4 aspects? And finally, we want to test how PC and smartphone respondents differ in those same aspects. Do we see difference between smartphones and PC? Because maybe it's easier for smartphones to take and upload pictures than for PCs. To do so, we designed an experiment based in a 2-step random assignment. The first step was that respondents were randomly invited to answer through PCs or through smartphones. So half of the sample answered with PCs and half answered with smartphones. Within those device subsamples, respondents were assigned first to a control group answering open-ended questions using TextAngTree. Others were assigned to treatment group answering open-ended questions, but with images. And finally, some were assigned to the second treatment group answering open-ended questions with images, but this time including a motivational message. And we will refer to those as PC text, PC image push, smartphone text, smartphone image, and smartphone image push. About our data, we conduct a survey that was focused on the population age between 18 and 70 years old living in Germany. We used quota sampling, and the quotas were age and gender, and we used a German microcensus. The data was collected between the 15th of July and the 8th of August of last year, and we used the Respond the Opt-in online panel. And the final sample was about 3,000 respondents that complete the survey until the end of the experiment. About the survey experiment was placed at the end of the survey to avoid harming the main survey with potential breakoffs. Before the experiment, there were a maximum of 86 questions, depending on other experiments. And they asked about a variety of topics like politics, work, and personality. We asked to the PC group 2 open-ended questions, to the smartphone groups 4 open-ended questions, and after those open-ended questions, we asked them satisfaction and usability questions. About the questions, as said before, we asked 2 questions to all the groups, PC and smartphone groups, and 2 questions only to smartphone groups. That's because those questions, in terms of image, we're asking for an image taken, a picture or a photo taken in the moment. And because not all computers have a webcam, we prefer to ask those questions only to smartphones. The first question asked about describing the favorite place that they visited during the last vacation. The second question asked about their favorite dish. The third question asked about describing what they were seeing from the place where they were answering the survey. And finally, the last question asked for how they were feeling right now. The wording of the questions is slightly changed between the text groups and the image groups. As we can see for vacations, for instance, the text group was asked, please describe the favorite place that you visit. Please type in your answer in the open field below. For the image groups, it was, please upload a photo that describes the favorite place that you visit. To select the photo, click on the folder icon above. So obviously, there were slightly changes because the tasks that we were asking them to perform were different. Here you can have a little, here you can check the image tool designs. As you see, it's simple. We have the question, then we have an icon with some instructions. If they click the folder, the device opens the gallery. If they click the camera, the device opens the camera. To perform the analysis, we use 4 different indicators that we compared between experimental groups. The first indicator was break off. Basically, we compute the proportion of participants abandoning the survey. The second indicator was item non-response. So for those that did not break off, we compute the proportion of respondents not answering. The third indicator was completion time. So for those who answered, we compute the difference between the time a respondent clicked next on the survey page minus the time that the respondent entered the page. So we had all the time that they spent on the survey page, and we controlled for outliers. And finally, we compute the question evaluation. So basically, we compute the proportion of those that liked and also that found the question easy to a certain or to a great extent. And as we said, we compared those between groups in order to test our research questions. For the first research question that was aiming to explore the impact of asking participants to upload an image instead of typing, what we did is we compared for those indicators within device groups, the text group with the image and the image push groups. For the second research question that was testing the effect of adding a motivational message, we test within device groups, the image, and against the image push group. And finally, the third research question that was examining the difference between PC and smartphone respondents, we test for each group the PC and the smartphone group. So PC text was compared to smartphone text, PC image was compared to smartphone image, and so on. So let's move to the main results. For the breakoffs, here we have the proportion of participants breaking off for each question and group. For the first research question, what we find is that the image groups, those that were asked to answer with an image, present a significantly higher break-off rate than the text groups for 6 of the 12 comparisons. So for the text groups, the break-off rate is really low, mostly 0. And for the smartphone group, for the image groups, what we see is that those are between 1 and 2% break-off rates. So it's kind of higher. For the second research questions, we don't find any effects of adding a motivational message, none whatsoever. And for the third research question, we see that smartphone groups present a significantly higher break-off rate than the PC counterparts. Moving to the item non-response. For the first research question is where we find the most important and the highest difference. What we see is that text groups present really slow item non-response rates, whereas the image groups present a way higher and significantly higher non-response rates. So we see the text group ranges the item non-response from 0.3 to 1 to 2.2, whereas we see that for the image groups, those item non-response rates from 25.1% to 51.6%. So the increase is really high and substantial. For the second research question, we see that adding a motivational message significantly reduces item non-response for some of the questions. And even if the reduction is not huge, and it doesn't happen and we don't see that effect on all the questions, that is encouraging because it means that, well, we can reduce item non-response, including motivational messages at some times. For the third research question, we see the contrary to what we saw for breakups. Now smartphones present significantly low item non-response rates. Moving to completion times, we can see that for the first research question, the image groups present significantly higher completion times than the text groups. And that's almost, in some cases, that's almost a double completion time. That's not necessarily something bad. It might mean that they take more time, the respondents take more time thinking about what they are going to upload, but also it might mean that they take more time because it is more difficult for them to go and find the exact image or to take the image instead of typing the text. We see mostly no significant effects of including a motivational message when it comes to completion times. And we do see some difference in terms of device because the smartphones present significantly lower completion times for vacation. And finally, in terms of survey evaluation, again, we see a negative impact of asking participants to answer with images. We see that those that were asked to answer with images present significantly lower proportions of respondents liking the survey, and also a lower proportion of respondents finding the questions easy. So respondents thought that it was harder for them, less easy for them to answer using an image, and also they didn't like it as much as typing. Again, we don't find any significant difference between those that were asked to upload an image and those that were asked that but with a motivational message. And we do find a difference in terms of satisfaction. We see that those answering with the smartphones had a lower satisfaction, but that's only true for those that were not prompted with a motivational message. So it seems that that difference disappears once we prompt them with a motivational message. So let's move to the conclusions. There are a lot of results, so I'm going to try to summarize them in this table. For the first research question that looks at the impact of answering with images instead of text, what we find is that asking them to upload an image slightly increases the breakup rates. It substantially increases the item non-response. We move from item non-response of about 1% to item non-response of between 30 or 20 something and 50 something item non-response rates, which is a huge increase, and we lose a lot of people in terms of answers. When we look at completion times, people take more time answering with images, which might mean that it's more complicated, most difficult for them to find an image, and they take more time finding an image than not typing. And people do not seem to like answering with images as much as they like typing, and they don't seem to find it as easier as typing. So not pretty encouraging. When it comes to motivational messages, in general, we don't find any significant impact, but we do find an impact where it is more interesting to find an impact. We see that for some of the questions, we can slightly reduce item non-response. So considering that there are no negative effects, it seems like a good option, at least to include it, because it might reduce the item non-response for some of the questions. And when it comes to the difference between devices, the results are mixed. Sometimes smartphones present higher breakup rates, but also present lower item non-response, and they sometimes present higher completion times, but not always. And for some of the groups, smartphone respondents reported lower satisfaction levels, but it seems that that is not true when you include a motivational message. So results are pretty mixed when it comes to the difference between devices. So let's talk about the limits and the next steps. The main limit is that we are talking about our opt-in online panels. So we don't know if those results replicate using a probability sample. Second limit is that PC and smartphone subsamples were unbalanced. We randomized invitations, but they decided if they wanted to join. So the subsamples of PC and smartphones are not balanced, are not equivalent. Finally, we we're talking about the opportunities of images basically in terms of, well, they can give us richer information, but we did not look at data quality indicators like information conveyed. So this is something that we should do in the future. And what are the next steps? We should find ways to reduce the breakoff rates and the item non-response. And we should, for instance, test if higher incentives might do that, or if we remark the confidentiality in a way that does not prompt privacy concerns, maybe we could reduce those item non-response and breakoff rates. We could also test new questions, new applications, and new samples. We should explore questions that are more substantively interesting for substantive researchers, and we should explore if we can replicate those results in probability samples. So this is all. Thank you very much for attending and for watching this presentation. If you have any questions, I'm going to be really happy to answer those. And thank you again. Have a nice day.